Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something truly monumental. Imagine taking a huge stack of history, like an entire civilization's worth, and boiling it down.
Making it digestible, illuminating, maybe even exciting.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing with Will and Ariel Durant's massive 11-volume series, The Story of Civilization.
It's an incredible piece of work. We'll look at why it's held readers for so long.
And then we'll zoom in on one specific, really vibrant part they covered, the Age of Voltaire, the Enlightenment.
Right. And to guide us through this mountain of information, we've gathered quite a mix of sources.
We have. What are we working with?
Well, we've got insights from Reddit threads where people discuss the Durants, some academic lecture notes on the Age of Reason,
Okay.
a modern blog's take on the Age of Voltaire, and some pretty detailed biographies, too.
Nice. So our mission today seems clear. We're going to unpack how the Durants actually did history, their unique approach.
We also need to look at the critical side of the perspectives on their work because, let's be honest, nothing this big is perfect.
Fair point. And then the main event, really getting into the life and ideas of Voltaire.
Yeah, this guy. His wit, his relentless push for certain freedoms. He fundamentally shaped the world we live in now.
Okay, let's get started. Let's unpack this.
So, the story of civilization, the first thing you have to grapple with is just the sheer scale, the vision.
It's kind of mind-boggling, isn't it?
Totally. We're talking 11 volumes, written over 4 decades, from 1935 all the way to 1975.
By Will Durant and, importantly, his wife and co-author, Ariel Durant.
Exactly. It's basically their entire intellectual lives poured into understanding history.
And the scope they aimed for was huge. A survey of both Eastern and Western civilizations.
Although, it does end up focusing much more heavily on Western history as it goes on.
Right. That first volume, Our Oriental Heritage, it covers Asia, but maybe not with the depth some might expect throughout the whole series.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. But despite that, or maybe even because of the grand narrative they built, these books just captivated people.
How so? What made them stick?
Well, think about this. We found a Reddit user talking about Volume 6, saying they can't pull myself from it, called the whole series a priceless gift to humanity.
Wow.
The Durants had this astonishing knack for connecting things across vast stretches of time. They made it a coherent story.
Making it feel connected, not just a list of dates.
Precisely. And creating a storyline that's actually, easy to follow. That's part of their genius.
And the writing style itself gets mentioned a lot. People call it very easy to read.
Yeah, and it has this sort of quirky sense of humor sometimes. Makes dense history feel more alive, more accessible.
I heard a great anecdote. Apparently, Mike Tyson read them while he was in jail.
Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't speak to some kind of universal appeal, I don't know what does.
Huh. That's amazing. And it shows, it wasn't just academics reading this.
And it's not a one-and-done read for a lot of people either, is it?
Not at all. We saw comments about people revisiting the series constantly, finding endless reading pleasure and learning new things with each rereading.
Even 50 years later.
Even 50 years later, it becomes like this ongoing conversation with the past.
Some people also mention it acting as a springboard, right? Like a starting or jumping off point.
Exactly. It sparks curiosity. You read about something in Durant, and suddenly you're off reading 3 other books on that specific topic.
And commercially, this wasn't some niche academic thing. It was huge.
Oh, absolutely massive. Bestsellers. Millions of copies sold, translated into 9 languages.
And all 11 volumes were Book of the Month Club selections for history books of this depth.
Unheard of, pretty much. It shows how wide their appeal was.
And they got critical acclaim, too, culminating in that Pulitzer.
Right. For the 10th volume, Rousseau and Revolution won the Pulitzer for general nonfiction in 1968. That's major recognition.
There's that great quote from Jeffrey Brune, a historian from their time.
Oh, yeah, about Durant scanning broader vistas with a keener eye for captivating details and colorful personalities.
And pouring 3 million words into print with more eloquent and inextinguishable zest. Zest. I love that.
It really captures it, doesn't it? The energy in their writing.
It's why you hear people say things like, there is absolutely nothing like them.
And that it's unlikely we'll ever see anyone successfully pull off something similar again.
It really does feel one of a kind. A panoramic view that can, like you said, spark that lifelong interest in history.
Okay, but as with any historical work this old and this, big, we have to talk about the nuances, the limitations.
Right. Because while people love it, it's also described as old and out of date in certain aspects.
And that's unavoidable, really. History isn't static, it keeps evolving.
How so? What changes?
Well, you get new archaeology, for starters, new physical evidence, but also new perspectives, reevaluations of old sources. We start incorporating information that was overlooked before.
So if someone picks up the Durants today, what's the key thing to keep in mind?
Just that scholarship moves on. There's a great example. Someone compiled a reading list of the best recent books on medieval history. Every single book on that list was published after the Durants wrote their volume on that period, The Age of Faith.
Wow. Okay, so that doesn't mean the Durants are wrong, necessarily, but that there's just been a lot more work done since.
Exactly. It's not a criticism of them, it's just the nature of the field. You build on what came before.
And besides just new facts or interpretations, there's that lens you mentioned earlier, the Western-centric focus.
Yeah, that's definitely noticeable, especially after the first volume. It becomes very focused on European and later American history.
It sort of leaves many Eastern cultures untouched, as one source put it.
Right, and it's based on a bit of a misconception. It's not that there wasn't history recorded in the East.
Oh.
Actually, often much more history was recorded in the East than in the West, sometimes in incredible detail. The Durants' focus was likely a reflection of their time, their training, maybe their own interests.
Okay, so given these points the age, the Western focus, it makes sense that the academic reception has been, well, mixed.
Yeah, some serious historians can be a bit dismissive of anything that doesn't match current academic practices.
So how should someone reading them today approach that? Just ignore the academics.
No, not at all. It's about critical thinking, really. You appreciate the Durants for what they do well, the storytelling, the connections.
When you recognize the weaknesses.
Exactly. And ideally, you pair it with more up-to-date stuff. Think about Thomas Cromwell, Henry VIII's advisor.
Right. Often portrayed as the villain, the ruthless operator.
Historically, yes. Responsible for all the nasty bits of Henry's reign, or so the story went.
But that's changed, hasn't it?
Massively. Modern scholarship often sees him more as a kind of proto-prime minister, someone who actually tried to avoid war.
Really?
Yeah, and likely had far less overall bodies on his hands than many other leaders back then. It shows how narratives shift with new evidence or just new ways of looking at the old evidence.
So the value in the Durants isn't necessarily perfect accuracy on every single point 50 years later.
It's more in the brilliant storytelling, as one source put it. They make history engaging, alive, even with those occasional and inevitable inaccuracies.
Okay, that's a really helpful perspective. With that foundation laid, let's shift gears to the main focus, the Age of Voltaire.
Right. This period, roughly 1715 to 1789, also known more famously as the Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason.
How would you define this whole movement? What was at its core?
Well, the fundamental belief was that reason should be the ultimate source of authority. Not tradition, not the church, not divine right. Reason.
So a lot of questioning of the old ways.
A huge amount. Ideas like deism really took off.
That's the belief in a creator God, but one who doesn't interfere. No miracles, no specific holy book.
Pretty much. God is the clockmaker who wound up the universe and let it run, and even atheism started to gain more traction.
And the emphasis was on empirical evidence, observation.
Right. Using your senses, using logic to understand the world. And this inevitably started reshaping how people thought about society, government, everything.
And it wasn't just happening in one place, was it? It seems like it played out differently across Europe.
Absolutely. It coincided with all the European exploration and colonization, what some call the European moment in world history, often with, well, tragic outcomes.
But the Enlightenment itself had different flavors.
Totally. France was maybe the most radical, very anti-government, anti-church. Thinkers were getting thrown in prison or exile.
Like Voltaire himself?
Exactly. Whereas in Germany, it often took a more maybe spiritual or nationalistic turn.
In Scotland, I hear the Scottish Enlightenment was hugely influential.
Immensely, especially on the American founders. Then you had Italy having this intellectual burst as the church's temporal power waned. Even Russia was actively promoting arts and sciences under rulers like Catherine the Great.
It's fascinating how these big ideas about reason and rights landed so differently depending on the local soil.
It really is. But underneath it all, this era laid the foundations for so much of our modern world.
Like what specifically?
Well, the emphasis on individual rights, the idea of secular government, the whole concept that reason should guide policy, Montesquieu's idea of the separation of powers.
That went straight into the U.S. Constitution.
Directly. It's hard to overstate the influence.
And wasn't there a kind of motto for the era from Kant?
Yes, Immanuel Kant. Saper aude, dare to know, Have courage to use your own reason.
Wow. That really captures the spirit, doesn't it? Don't just accept things, figure them out for yourself.
Exactly. It was a call for intellectual independence.
And these weren't just abstract ideas floating around. They had real-world consequences, big ones.
Oh, definitely. The drive to dismantle traditional authorities, especially in France, eventually exploded into the French Revolution.
Which got incredibly violent, of course.
It did, but the ideals behind it, liberty, equality, fraternity-inspired movements for egalitarianism, people like Mary Wollstonecraft arguing for women's rights.
And it even influenced slave rebellions, right? Like the Haitian Revolution.
Absolutely. The call for universal rights couldn't easily be contained. It was a truly world-changing period.
Okay, so let's bring it to the man himself, the figurehead of this Age of Voltaire, François-Marie Arouet.
Who takes the name Voltaire apparently after his first stint in the Bastille prison.
Why Voltaire? Where did the name come from?
Nobody's 100% sure. Could be an anagram of the Latinized version of his surname, Arouet, or maybe just a family nickname from his childhood. Either way, it stuck.
And this guy wrote a lot.
Understatement of the century. His output was just staggering. Over 20,000 letters are known.
20,000.
And over 2,000 books and pamphlets. And he wrote in basically every form. Plays, poems, novels, essays, history, science popularization, you name it.
He sounds like one of the first modern celebrities created by writing.
He really was one of the first authors to become internationally famous and actually make a good living from his writing alone.
So what were his big themes? What was he constantly hammering away at?
Freedom, 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 freedom of speech, freedom of religion, separation of church and state. Those were his big ones.
And he wasn't a fan of the powers that be.
Not the unchecked ones, no. He campaigned relentlessly against what he saw as the abuses of priestly power and the aristomonarchical system. He actually favored a constitutional monarchy like Britain's.
Ah, Britain. That was the key experience for him, wasn't it? His time in England.
Hugely important. He was exiled there from 1726 to 1729.
And what did he find there?
He was just blown away by the relative political freedom, the constitutional limits on the king, the degree of religious tolerance compared to France anyway, and he devoured the works of Newton and Locke.
The giants of English science and philosophy.
Exactly. And when he went back to France, he wrote his letters concerning the English nation.
Praising all the things he saw in Britain.
You got it. Praising their liberties, their thinkers.
Which probably didn't go over well back home.
Not at all. The book was banned, copies were publicly burned by the executioner, and Voltaire had to flee Paris again to avoid arrest.
Twice exiled for his writings. That takes some serious conviction.
It really does. He wasn't just an armchair philosopher.
And he wasn't just a philosopher-writer either. He had this scientific side, especially through his partnership with Emily du Châtelet.
Ah, yes, Madame du Châtelet, a remarkable figure in her own right, a brilliant mathematician and physicist.
And they worked together.
For about 16 years, yeah. It was a major intellectual partnership. They set up shop in her chateau, built up this huge library, like 21,000 books, bigger than most universities then.
Wow.
And they did scientific experiments together. She did the definitive French translation of Newton's Principia Mathematica, which is still used today.
And Voltaire helped popularize Newton in France.
Absolutely. He was crucial in explaining Newton's ideas about optics and gravity to a French audience that was still mostly following Descartes.
Okay, let's talk about his most famous weapon. Satire. Candide.
Right, his masterpiece. It just skewers the optimistic philosophy of Leibniz, the idea that everything happens for the best in this best of all possible worlds.
Which, after seeing earthquakes, wars, and general human awfulness, Voltaire found absurd.
Completely absurd. And Candide shows that absurdity in hilarious, often brutal detail.
And he had that famous phrase, that battle cry, écraser l'infâme, crush the infamous thing.
Yes. What exactly was the infamous thing?
Well, it generally referred to abuses of power, superstition, intolerance, especially when carried out by the established church and the state. Anything that crushed the human spirit through dogma or oppression.
He had another great line. Superstition sets the whole world in flames. Philosophy quenches them.
That sums up his project pretty well. Reason, intolerance versus fanaticism.
Exactly. And he didn't just write about it, he acted on it.
You mentioned his activism. The Jean Calas case is the famous one, right?
Just the prime example. Calas was a Huguenot, a Protestant merchant in Toulouse.
And he was accused of murdering his son to stop him converting to Catholicism.
Right. based on flimsy evidence and fueled by anti-Protestant hysteria. He was brutally tortured, broken on the wheel, and then executed in 1762.
Horrific.
And Voltaire heard about it and was outraged. He launched this incredible campaign, wrote pamphlets, letters, pulled strings.
To do what? The man was already dead.
To clear his name, to overturn the verdict, posthumously. And incredibly, he succeeded. In 1765, the conviction was annulled.
That's amazing. So he was really using his fame and influence to fight specific injustices.
Absolutely. People saw him as a major humanitarian figure because he would actively try to influence judges to get unjust sentences reversed. He put his reputation on the line.
Okay, so we have this picture of a champion of reason, tolerance, justice. But like most historical figures, when you dig deeper, it gets complicated.
Oh, definitely. His views weren't always simple or consistent by today's standards. Let's start with religion.
He was obviously critical of the Catholic Church in France.
Fiercely critical, called some of its history propagandistic, but he wasn't necessarily anti-religious in a blanket sense. He did acknowledge Christian self-sacrifice sometimes.
His main target seemed to be fanaticism, the abuse of belief.
Exactly, that famous quote. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. That seems key to his thinking. Danger lies in irrational belief leading to harmful action.
Okay, but then you get to his writings on Judaism, which sound pretty harsh.
They are. In his Dictionnaire philosophique, his philosophical dictionary, his entry on Jews is highly negative, calls them ignorant and barbarous.
How does that square with his advocacy for tolerance?
It's a major point of debate. Some scholars, like Peter Gay, argued he was primarily attacking Judaism as a way to attack Christianity, seeing it as the source, sort of an indirect critique.
Is there evidence against that? Or nuance?
Well, yes. He did have a Jewish friend, Daniel de Fonseca, whom he seemed to respect, and he did condemn the persecution of Jews. He even apparently promised his friend he'd revise the offensive passages in the dictionary.
Did he?
No, he never got around to it, so it remains this really uncomfortable contradiction in his work.
What about Islam?
His early views were also generally quite negative. He saw Islam and the Quran through a critical lens, similar to how he viewed Christian scripture.
He wrote that play, Muhammad.
Yes, fanaticism, or Muhammad the Prophet. And he explicitly described it as being written in opposition to the founder of a false and barbarous sect.
Pretty blunt. Did his views change later?
Sources suggest his views moderated somewhat as he learned more, but those early criticisms were certainly strong and influential.
Okay, so critical of Christianity, Judaism, Islam. But then we get to Confucianism, and it's a totally different story.
Completely different. This is one of the most fascinating contrasts. He consistently praised Confucian ethics in politics.
Why? What did he see there?
He saw China's system, or his idealized version of it, as a model meritocracy run by scholar officials. He admired Confucianism as a rational, ethical system without divine revelation or superstition.
So like a secular philosophy for governing?
Exactly. He loved that Confucius, in his view, taught no new religion, claimed no inspiration, and used no delusions. For Voltaire, it was reason in action, an alternative to European religious dogma.
That is a striking contrast.
Yeah.
Okay, one more tricky area. Race and slavery.
Right. This is complex, too. Voltaire rejected the biblical story of Adam and Eve. He was a polygenist.
Meaning he believed different races had separate origins, not all descended from one couple.
Correct. Which was a controversial scientific idea at the time, challenging religious orthodoxy. Some have linked this view, maybe unfairly, maybe not, to his investments in colonial trading companies that were involved in the slave trade.
But he also spoke out against slavery.
Very powerfully, yes. Especially in Candide, there's that brutal scene with the enslaved man in Suriname missing a hand and a leg.
The one who says, "It is at this price that you eat sugar in Europe."
That exact line. It's a scathing indictment. He condemns the whites and Christians who proceed to purchase Negroes cheaply for the sake of luxury goods. So again, there's a tension there between his speculative scientific views, maybe his investments, and his clear moral condemnation of the practice of slavery.
Okay, let's move towards the end of his life. He eventually returned to Paris, right, after decades away.
Yes, after 25 years in exile or living away from the capital, he got this absolutely heroic welcome back in 1778.
But he died shortly after.
Yeah, just a few months later at age 83. And because of his lifelong battle with the church, he was denied a Christian burial.
But that wasn't the end of his story, physically speaking.
No. During the French Revolution, his supporters had his remains moved to the Pantheon in Paris, the great mausoleum for French national heroes. He was seen as a key forerunner of the French Revolution.
His influence just seemed to echo everywhere.
Immense. Victor Hugo said, "To name Voltaire is to characterize the entire 18th century."
High praise.
Goethe admired him hugely. Napoleon carried a copy of Candide with him on campaigns,
Catherine the Great in Russia.
corresponded with him for years, bought his entire library after he died. In Russia, they actually credited him with helping to stamp out the fires of fanaticism and ignorance by ridicule, using wit as a weapon.
And Will Durant, bringing it back to our historians, had a great summation.
He did. Italy had a Renaissance, and Germany had a Reformation, but France had Voltaire. He was, for his country, both Renaissance and Reformation, and half the Revolution.
Wow. That puts him right at the center of everything.
It really does. And just to add one more layer of complexity, his relationship with Rousseau. They were often critical of each other, sometimes bitterly so.
Right. They had very different ideas about society and human nature.
Very different. Yet near the end, Rousseau actually defended Voltaire, acknowledging the good he had done, despite their disagreements, shows the respect Voltaire commanded, even from rivals.
So, wrapping this all up, we've journeyed through this incredible, sprawling work by the Durants, a monumental effort to tell the story of civilization.
Captivating, influential, but also, a product of its time with limitations we need to acknowledge.
And then we dove deep into Voltaire, this absolute titan of the Enlightenment, champion of reason, justice, free speech.
But also a figure with contradictions, with views that challenge us today. Complex, like the era itself.
And what you see here, listening to this, is how engaging with these big historical works, these major figures, it gives you more than just facts.
Right. It's like a shortcut to being better informed, not just about the past, but about the debates still shaping our world. Freedom of speech, role of religion, critiques of power, it's all there.
You get surprising details, memorable stories, and perspectives that, frankly, go way beyond a quick news hit or a simple summary.
Absolutely. It gives you context, depth.
Okay, so let's leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on. Something provocative.
All right. Consider this. Voltaire, this great champion of liberty, he actually distrusted democracy.
Really? Why?
He kind of feared the idiocy of the masses, as he might have put it. He tended to believe that real progressive change could only come from the top down, from an enlightened monarch advised by philosophers like, himself.
Yet, everything he fought for, civil liberties, free speech, separation of church and state, these are the absolute bedrock of modern democratic societies.
Exactly. So the question is, what does Voltaire's complex legacy tell us about that ongoing tension between needing effective, maybe even strong leadership and protecting individual freedom?
And maybe about the constant need for all of us to, in his famous words from Candide, cultivate our garden of knowledge, of critical thinking, of reasoned debate.
That sounds like a good place to leave it. Lots to think about.